I will be reviewing the respiratory models to help you study for your respiratory system test and also for the lab practical. And on the practical, we will be using the three models that I'm going to review right now. So this first one shows the larynx, the trachea, and the bronchi, which are the branches off of the trachea. I will start at the top. So you're looking at the anterior side of the larynx. This is the thyroid cartilage that forms the front wall of the larynx. And then down here, this ring of cartilage is called cricoid cartilage, and this forms the inferior portion of the larynx. Then extending down from the larynx is the trachea. Tracheal ring cartilage are these bluish rings of cartilage that help to form the trachea and provide structure. Then all of the branches basically from here down, as soon as the trachea branches right here into two, all of these are referred to as bronchi. And the first two branches are called primary bronchi. These enter each lung. So this goes into the right lung, this goes into the left lung. And then there is further branching of the primary bronchi. They branch into secondary bronchi and then tertiary bronchi. Ultimately, the smallest branches are called bronchioles. For the lab practical, you only need to know the two primary bronchi. And that is about everything that you can see on this model. The next respiratory model is right here, a sagittal view of the head and the neck. And let's start up here with the nasal cavity. These bulges on the lateral portion of the nasal cavity are called nasal conchae. Then right here is the hard palate. The soft palate is in red. And the palate separates the nasal cavity from the oral cavity below. The oral cavity is primarily filled with the tongue. That's this red structure here. So we have hard palate, soft palate, nasal cavity above, oral cavity below. And then the pharynx is the upper throat. It is divided into three sections. The portion that is behind the nasal cavity is called the nasopharynx. So that extends down to about the end of the soft palate. And then behind the oral cavity right here, behind the tongue, is the oropharynx. And then below that, right here, is the laryngopharynx. And that's the portion of the pharynx right above where you have a split. So it's just a single tube all the way to here, and then it splits into two separate tubes. If you go straight down, this posterior tube is the esophagus, and this is part of the digestive tract. The anterior tube is the trachea, and right on top of the trachea is the larynx. So you have the larynx is the first couple of inches, and then the trachea is the windpipe. There is a structure right here called the epiglottis. It's a piece of cartilage that can bend down and it can cover the opening into the larynx and the trachea. And the epiglottis has the really important function of ensuring that food and liquids get channeled into the proper tube. They need to go down into the esophagus because that's part of the digestive system. Also, it ensures that air goes into the proper tube, which is the larynx and the trachea. That's the passageway for air, leads down to the lungs. And then one more model. This torso model has the lungs on it, and I'll just review those really quickly. They're pretty easy to remember. You have a left lung on the left side. The right lung is on the right side. They are divided into lobes. The left lung only has 2 lobes because it's a little bit smaller and narrower due to the cardiac notch. That's a cutout to make room for the heart to fit here. This lobe is the superior lobe. This is the inferior lobe. And then on the right side, there are 3 lobes: superior, middle, and inferior. And then this red structure that goes across the bottom of the lungs and actually extends back against the back body wall. This is the diaphragm. That is a muscle that is involved in breathing. It helps, it allows for inhalation and exhalation as it moves.